Gonna be here. Let's see if I can get some people in on this on Sunday. Color pencils coming up now. Kevin Watkins. Hello, Kevin. Rhonda Harper. Hello. Can y'all hear me? Yes? Hope so. Haven't gone live on my laptop in a long time. Let's see, who else can we get in here? Let's see who else is coming in. We got some more people. Got a topic. Okay. Shelman. Hey, Keith. Lauren Peters. Miss Bristol. Hall. Okay, we starting to get a little audience. Hello, Miss. We got Wilson. Smalls. All right, we got about a little bit. I'm gonna wait a little bit longer and see if I can get some more people in, because this is a fiery topic. I think this is a good topic. At least it's a good topic to me. If you don't like it, I figure you probably wouldn't chime in. Hey, what's up, Shell? I still owe you a score, don't you? Or did you get a score? I don't know. I don't remember. Don't make me feel bad. I'm still trying to plan out my my assessment music. Well, I'm about 90% sure of what I'm gonna do for assessments. I'm making a big change to how I approach assessments this year. My freshmen or my beginners, because they're not all freshmen, some of them are juniors. It's about a class of 25. I will be taking them separate as their own group for comments. They're not quite moving as fast as I'm used to them moving. And so I feel like I think they're depending on the upperclassmen and the more experienced band people to carry their weight. And what better way to make you carry your own weight is to remove, all of the, assistants, which I feel like they're leaning on their band people. Okay, good, Shelman. You said you're good with the score. Okay, I'm gonna start. This topic came up. I talked to somebody at a school, college, HBCU college program. I'm not gonna say the program name because I don't want to give any implications on how well their program is running or whatever. But this topic came up. We were talking about what in particular our Black students can do going to college, and some trends that this person who is a college professor is witnessing. And I've seen quite a few responses from people who teach on the collegiate level at HBCUs and high minority populations, that there are specific deficits that exist in our students. And I'm gonna say this up front, tonight is not about a blame game. I don't think that's going to do anybody any good. And people know, I think people sometimes get the impression that I'm kind of gruff, but I feel like I'm honest, even with myself and what I am doing right and what I think I'm not doing right and what I'm trying to fix. I'm always trying to fix my craft. So the title of this came up because I write curriculum for my district. I teach in Baltimore City Public Schools, and my former supervisor embarked on writing a curriculum because we saw that Baltimore City hadn't had a actual curriculum for instrumental music or really the art that wasn't in a draft form for maybe could have been up to 10, 20, 30 years that anybody even thought about fine arts. And so we decided to hash at writing curriculum, and we've done a lot of work in scoring our curriculum. And some people have some emotions about curriculum and what's been what we've come up with, and some people have some other issues. And so I'll start talking about one. I came from Prince George's County, and I was exposed to instrumental music from, I want to say, day one. Kindergarten, being exposed to the instruments of the orchestra, going on trips to see orchestras and see people who play instruments, and not just people who play instruments, people who play instruments that look like me. And I didn't grow up in a affluent area. I lived in Southeast DC for a little bit, and then moved to Oxon Hill, Maryland, which is not a very right on DC of the DC line. It's not, a glamorous place to live, with a lot of, crime and all those common issues that we find sometimes in urban areas. But I always had access. I had access from kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade. No matter what area I moved in, the demographics, how it changed, economic status changed, but I still had access. And I'll say I had equal access from kindergarten all the way up to the 12th grade. Now, we know that changed when we got to No Child Left Behind. And, unfortunately, they started canning a lot of programs, and they started with urban areas because, as they started testing kids and saying that these kids can't read and write and do math, they said they don't need this. And so now we're here. I think we got here largely due to, some of these, I call them ordinances that came down that ruined band for urban kids, Black kids, minorities, Black and brown children. And so what got neglected, I feel like, is curriculum. Because if you can fine arts and you can all these things, then you are canning, curriculum. And so now we have people who are in college learning how to be band directors across America, not necessarily all Black, but just people in general. And I think they're quite ill prepared. I know I was. I started out I was just taking instrumental music major, concentration in education, but we didn't have an education program, which is common in some HBCUs where they don't have a music education degree. But even still with that, I still feel like you're ill prepared, because you can't learn how to teach in a vacuum. The best teachers are people who have been in the field and learned the best practices and how to teach information to people with a different level of intellect. You're talking to children. You can't say certain terms that you learn in your pedagogy classes to kids because they don't understand, they can't relate it to anything that they know at their current time. And I think teachers aren't being developed in that way. So now let's segue to teacher certificate programs. I came in through an alternative certificate, meaning that I graduated with a degree in music, but I was not state certified. I took pedagogy classes, but I hadn't taken education classes. My district was doing a special program where if you went back to graduate school, they would pay for it, and then you would be certified in a year with a master's degree. So you had to get a master's degree in 1 year. And one of the classes I took was curriculum and planning, and we used this text called Understanding by Design. And it really significantly helped me in my first years of teaching, because when you don't know how to teach, you have to have a plan. And I currently observe teachers in my district, and I talk to teachers across the country. And often where they're going wrong is they don't know where to begin and where to end. They don't know where they don't really have an idea of what that map's going to look like. And so if you ever get in front of, to be honest, minority kids, they're very savvy, and sometimes, especially urban kids, in knowing when you're BSing them. And if you don't know what you're going to do when you hit that room, any kid will tear you apart, especially kids who have learned how to read social cues on a level that, some psychologists can't read. And so I wanted to talk about curriculum because when we talk about marching band and we talk about HBCU bands and we're talking about show style band, often when I hear people talk, sometimes it's kind of like people are just saying, well, we want to do music that the kids are engaged with and, you know, quote unquote, the white way of doing it in symphonic band and concert band isn't always relevant to our kids. And I completely disagree, because I came up in an urban area and it was completely relevant to my development, as well as marching band, as well as jazz band. All of those things help shape me into what I think I'm a pretty proficient musician. And so when we talk about curriculum, people don't really know how to plan where they're going. They just, I think sometimes, and I've observed this, people pick a song and they don't know how to extract the skills the kids need to be able to do the song successfully. And I can say that honestly, I used to pick music I like. I was like, oh, I like this song, or I loved it when I was in school, and I'm gonna throw it in front of my kids. And then, you know, you crash and burn and you realize you've got to actually teach the skills in the song. So if you're going to teach through performance, which is a whole series, you have to still be able to know how to plan for that. Otherwise, you're just going to fail. And I wanted to know kind of everybody's input. I don't know who's still in here, but what do we think about curriculum when it comes to urban education, instrumental music? Should there even be a differentiation? Or are we saying that whatever the state standards, the national standards, and however our districts prescribe to teach them should be the way? I don't know. I'm asking you to chime in, because I don't want to, you know, just talk to myself. I know what I think, but what is going to be the fix? Because we can't ignore the fact that some of the things that are said about our urban kids are true. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Some things across the board, our kids sometimes can't sight read very well. I'm raising my hand. My kids are very intimidated by sight reading, no matter how many skills I've taught in sight reading. It's just something about putting music in front of them that they've never done scares the hell out of them. They're a lot better at sight reading than they were maybe 1 or 2 years ago, and I'm better at trying to get kids to sight read. But if you have a kid that they start playing instruments in the 9th grade at my school, 95% of them are beginners in the 9th grade. And then you say, I'm gonna take you to assessments. When I was in the 5th grade, sight reading was not something that we were doing, at least not a whole piece of music, but yet we still have to be held to the same curriculum standards as other districts. It's kind of not, it's not very fair, because developmentally, that kid who's been playing for 6 months should not be able to sight read a grade 2, grade 3 piece of music. And I know some people can say, well, kids can. Yeah, but if you think about when you started playing an instrument, under a year's worth of time, you cannot sight read a grade 2 or 3 piece of music. Shelman, you said, well, in Alabama, our course of study for the arts is very broad. I think it's purposely broad so that teachers can use the approach that's needed for their school. The problem is, because it's so broad, it's easy to not know where to begin. I agree. That's what we've been running into in writing curriculum for our district, is trying to leave it open enough for teachers to be able to plan accordingly to the student that's in front of them. But there's some things that you just can't ignore. There's some skills that you don't get to leave behind. And I think if we don't find a way to still include by the end of this, or by, you know, like I said, understanding by design, by the end, if you have band every day and you see your students for at least 45 minutes, then your students should be able to play a B-flat concert scale by the end of the year. I do think you have to have benchmarks, because they also help gauge you and your teaching, and they help pace you. They're pacing guides for every other subject. And then when we get to fine arts, we kind of get squeamish. There's an equity issue, of course, that prevents a lot of these goals from being reached. When we say equity issues, we're talking about like I said, I have some students in my program that started playing in the 5th grade, and then I have some students who started playing in the 9th grade. Though they're on 2 different playing fields. You said, Shelman, and it got revised in 2017, and it's even more broad. LOL. So it's basically says teach music. Yeah, I feel like across the board, people can probably raise their hand and say, they say students should be able to tell the composer's intent of a piece of music. That's very broad. That's a broad scale. Composer intent, we could be talking about Mary Had a Little Lamb, or we can be talking about Amazing Grace by Frank Ticheli. Those are 2 different levels of depth. And I do think beginning teachers need something that kind of helps them find their way through it. I suggest, I don't know how many teacher certification programs for music involve curriculum planning and development. I think often lesson planning and development is put on the back end, and understanding the curriculum gets thrown at you when you get hired by a district and people don't even know how to interpret the curriculum that's put in front of them, and they don't have the experience of how long it takes for a kid to learn a grade, whatever piece of music or a certain skill to be proficient. And we know that that varies, but there's some common timelines that I've noticed after teaching for 14 years. But most, a lot of teachers don't teach for 14 years anymore, and beginner teachers are 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd year, even up to 5th year teachers. They just haven't had the experience in front of kids enough to be able to gauge that successfully. I think about when we talk about urban education, often there's a pushback on the music that is accessible, or that kids can't relate to music outside of marching band or what they listen to on the radio. And I push back often on that, why we, people say, why are we going by the standard of quote unquote the majority that, set the standards without considering minority students. And I'm like, but they're composers, they're young, fresh composers, women, Black and brown, diverse backgrounds, diverse styles that our kids can latch onto if you know repertoire. And that comes from attending your state conferences. When you go to state conferences and they do reading sessions, it's really important that you attend these conferences if you can, because you get exposed to compositions and music that your kids might look at from a lens that they can relate to. I think about a song that I heard last year at a conference, and I bought it the same day. A song called Syzygy, and Shelman knows it because Shelman stole it from me. But I heard it at our state conference, and I said, wow, there's some things in this song that kids can grab onto in my region, because it sounds like stylistically things that they like. And teaching music is, to me, teaching the skill is what's important. But if you can trick the kids into learning the skill because they like the song, that works out for us in the end. So there's all these different styles of music out that's classified as concert band. But if you really look at it and you dissect it and you start to kind of peel the chord structure and the analysis, you start to find out it's not so much classically based anymore. So that excuse of this music doesn't work for our kids, I don't want to hear it. I've taught in some of the worst places. Yeah, your kids love it. My kids love that song. Oh my God, they love that song. I don't think that that's a valid excuse anymore. Maybe when the music that was on the state list was, pretty much orchestral music's retranscribed for a band, you might be able to say that. And there's still titles on the state list in your area that exist, but you can have stuff submitted. I request songs submitted to the state list all the time. If I hear it, I like it, and I can make an argument that it should be added to our assessment list, I push for it, and I usually get my way. And I love it because adjudicators often haven't heard it, so they're listening to it with a fresh pair of ears instead of judging our kids based off of how North Texas played it. Because often they've heard an exemplar so many times in an interpretation of the music so many times that their ears are skewed to one way and one interpretation. So I love playing music from new and young composers because it allows, it stretches me. Even, you know, the music has changed a lot since I was in band in school. And it develops our kids on another level sometimes by playing some music that's new. But you gotta know the repertoire that's out there. Shelmy, you said several of my kids actually look forward to concert band time. I think it's because I challenge them musically, so they're bored with typical rap song format. Yeah, I agree, Shelmy. My kids will listen to something on the radio and say, yeah, we can't do that. It doesn't have enough in it. They recognize that, or this isn't gonna challenge us. We wanna do something that's gonna challenge us. And then that's how we start to push our kids to being a little more prepared for college. If they're playing music that challenges them, then they're going to work harder because they like it, especially if they like it. I learned a valuable lesson. I was talking to somebody last night. When I first got to my current position, which is all-girl high school, I wanted to do sleigh ride. And in my heart, I wanted to do the grade 4, you know, the Leroy Anderson sleigh ride that we all played in school, most of us. But I said, these are beginners. There's no way they're going to be able to play this 4 by the end of the year. Like at the time, I didn't have kids in my band program longer than 2 years. And it's still kind of the same. Most of my kids spend 2 years in my program and then they're gone, which sucks because if you're a beginner, you're still a beginner when you leave. If we're honest, if this was middle school and you started in the 6th grade and then you know, at 8th grade, you were, okay, like, let's go to college. It's the equivalent. So I wanted to play sleigh ride, and I gave him the grade 1 Michael Story sleigh ride. All the elements are there, but it's missing, you know, it doesn't have that nice little, you know, let's go band ending that we all kind of have grown to love if you like sleigh ride. Some of us are tired of it. And they butchered it. And they knew all the skills on the paper. They butchered it. And I remember being so frustrated. I was like, you know, I had my band director fit, you know, I've taught you all these rhythms, you know, I've taught you how to play scales, you know, and you know, up to a tempo of 120. I've taught you how to count in 2, and you butchered it. And then I went in my office and I looked at that sleigh ride. That was a grade 4. And an angry decision, I gave them the sleigh ride that was a grade 4. And these kids played the hell out of it. And in a shorter amount of time, it probably took me to learn how to play with 4 years of playing experience before I played it in school. And it taught me a lesson where kids are challenged and kids don't like to be, you know, you can't, if you dummy down things for kids, especially urban kids, and they know you're dumbing it down, they dumb themselves down too. And so I push hard music in front of them. And sometimes I know that they're not gonna, if this is assessment, I don't always go based on I'm trying to get a 1 anymore. I'm like, are they gonna learn how to play more skills by the time we are finished with this journey through this song? Will the feedback help drive them and drive me to the next steps? Or am I gonna go underplay my band? Which happens in, I feel like, some of our urban areas, and not just urban. People underplay their band all the time because they want a 1. They want a trophy. We do it in marching band. We do it in concert band. But nobody grows from it. And so back to curriculum, I just feel like you cannot be a good teacher without a planning process. You just can't. Even people who don't do lesson plans have looked at the score and studied it and planned out what they want to do or cover in rehearsal. You don't always have to do a lesson plan. I've moved more to rehearsal maps than lesson plans because, you know, that's more of what um, instruction kind of looks like sometimes for band programs. And if anybody's ever received any curriculum stuff from me, I think about almost every detail, not because I'm trying to impress my higher ups with a lot of jargon. It's so I know where I'm going and where I should end up by the end of class. It keeps me on track, and it keeps the students knowing that my students know that I've planned out what it is that I want them to learn. And I have an expectation by the end of class. Don't get it twisted. When I put out a lesson plan and I put at the end formative assessment, you're going to play measures 1 through 8. I'm not calling you out. Cut it out. Okay. So, but I know you look at the score. I've observed teachers who they're discovering stuff in the middle of, teaching the song, or the kids discover it and they have a question and the director didn't even notice or wasn't even prepared to address it, or there was some accidentals that they haven't taught, or even some technique things they haven't thought about. We're doing this song called The Cave You Feared, and there's a lot of next level skills that students have to be able to understand how to make different sounds on the instrument that aren't so tonal. And when you don't plan, you plan to fail. And, that applies to band too. And so if curriculum is not working, if the curriculum that our district, our state is giving out and kind of some of us enforcing us to do, it's nothing to it for us to try to start to be part of the conversation. I realized very quickly that one of the things that was hurting was for new teachers to not know how to get from point A to point B because they don't have a guide. Curriculum does not have to be abusive. It can literally just be a guide, a suggestion. And if you're smart, you should look at the suggested items and try to follow it. You don't have to be exact. You're going to deviate. Sometimes you find some things in class going over a piece of music that, you didn't plan for, and you have to readjust. But at least having a map, it just makes sense to me. And if, like I said, if we have so many complaints about the curriculums that some of us refuse to use, which I get, if you feel like it's not working, it's a waste of your time, then write one. But before you write one, I think try to find a way to take some classes on curriculum and how it's developed, and go to some workshops and go to some conferences, because when you do understand what skills you need to extract and what you need to teach, it just makes teaching kids easier. And it may be hard work up front, but it's very rewarding on the back end, because your students will respond a little bit better. You'll know where you're going. You get less surprises. I still get surprises in my teaching, but there's some things that if I look at a lesson plan a year ago for beginning band to the date, it's almost the same skill that my kids are working on right now, and they have mastered the skills before, or they are proficient. I don't like to use the word mastery with band because, let's be honest, your instrument's always going to kick your ass. My instrument's still kicking my ass. It'll be kicking my ass until I'm old and gray, because, music is infinite. There's infinite possibilities for development. But I don't know why urban education hasn't taken a massive look at curriculum when it comes to band. I think a lot of people just kind of have this, I want to leave it. I don't want to do it. My band director would come in the band room and put their scores on the podium, or not, or if it was just marching band, we got the song, we learned it, we didn't learn about the style, we didn't learn about, style is a big one that people ignore. I teach my kids style from day one, even if they're gonna play, hot cross buns or some of the little songs that are in method books. I try to teach them, a little bit of the history behind it, if there's any history, and how you should approach it, because adjudicators kind of pick that apart in our kids. Like I said, some of the symphonic band music is not really classically based in approach. Some of it had these little funky grooves and kind of marching band as items that, you can't teach in a vacuum. You've got to understand what that composer's background was and what, like we said, composer intent, what that composer was trying to convey in their music. I always tell the kids, look at the title first and sight reading. That's going to give you a good idea of what's going to happen. Then look at the composer. Most of us were taught to look at the key signature, times, the stars. Look at signatures, tempo, articulation, rhythm, symbols. Yeah, but if your kids play a lot of repertoire, like my kids do, sometimes they go in the sight reading room and they look at the composer and have a great idea of what's about to happen. And they know how to approach it. And that gives them an advantage that other groups coming in might not have. And then they start to try to read everything on the paper, not just, getting just the right rhythm and pitch correct and key. So challenges, I think I'm gonna start a curriculum development group on Facebook, just for us to be able to share lessons and ideas. I know it's not the same as, the band director's page. I think with the specific goal of sharing, even if it's repertoire ideas and things that you've done in your classroom that's working, because I think we're each other's biggest resource. And if curriculum is kind of one of those things that is the uncharted territory, it doesn't have to be. It's enough of us professionals on this live that can get together, do social media and say, hey, I saw your kids perform this song and blah, blah. How did you approach it? Because I think, like somebody always says, iron sharpens iron. And we can't keep ignoring the elephant in the room, that our kids aren't always leaving us with as many skills as they should have. And of course, we're only human and we can't build Rome overnight, and we're not magicians. A sophomore starting on their instrument and trying to audition for college a year and a half later, that's brutal. That's not fair. And that's what a lot of our kids are doing. So sometimes I know from the college end, I understand the complaint. You're sending us kids who can't read. And I'm like, that senior was put in my class in November because they needed a fine art credit. And then that student wants to be a part of band because they like it, but they have 5-6 years of deficit that I couldn't fix in a year or 6 months. But that also comes from colleges possibly reaching down, high school reaching down to middle school, directors have an open dialogue about what it is they teach and how they're teaching and how they're getting it across to kids sometimes who don't have the same advantages as other kids, and economic status is in the way, and they have to babysit after school, so they can't stay after school. They come to your class hungry. Those things get in the way of teaching, absolutely. But I think we're all smart enough that we can start to get together and figure out how to have our kids be able to do the same things that kids who have a better go at this thing than some of our students do. I'm not a genius when it comes to starting beginners. I have picked apart a toolbox I've gotten from those who came before me that wasn't in curriculums that I was taught. It wasn't in classes that I was taught. And I learned how to be a better teacher from taking notes on, oh, that's a quick way to teach a kid how to articulate. Oh, that's a great analogy to use. Let me write that down. Oh, I never thought about having kids do it this way. And those type of teachers, those gurus, they learned, because they wanted to be successful and nobody was teaching them how to. So They learned by trial and error. You said Jonathan Nelson said, down here in the South, the colleges are part of the problem. They have such an influence on our kids, but they never show their concert bands, so cranking is all they know. Yeah, I agree. I always argue with my kids that, I'm a Morgan State grad. And of course, to be quite honest, a lot of my students up here, the only band they've ever seen of college band is Morgan State, because a lot of my kids don't leave the city limits. That's just real. And so I always argue that when they see marching band and they're very excited to see the marching band, I tell them, hey guys, guess what you don't see? They spend 2-3 hours reading and working on music inside. They warm up for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes before they start playing anything marching band. They run through scales and chorales. And the same thing we're doing in class right now is exactly what they're doing. So, but what you see is you see the dance routine, and you see them drilling, and you see them dancing, and you're excited about the showmanship, but you have not seen the process. And I agree, Jonathan, we've got to do a better job at exposing our students to the process of band. If we don't show them the process, we can't get mad when they feel like, oh, well, I'm just going to go to college and I'm going to do marching band, And colleges, you can't get mad at us if that's what the kids come in with an idea of, because you are the pinnacle, you are the standard. You set the standard. I'm looking for my charger. I think I left it at school. Well, this live is about to end soon. Oh, well. So I agree, Jonathan. Colleges, you got to be involved. High school, you got to take your bands to the spring concerts. You got to take them to the college spring concerts. You got to take them out. You got to get them exposed to them. It's just, that they have a concert band, especially if you graduated from there. Start taking them to homecoming and take them to the spring concert. I know I'm going to do it. Hey, what's up, Justin? Take them to the spring concert. It's nothing wrong with it. If you can get a bus to go to homecoming, you can get a bus to go to the spring concert. And if you work a deal with the band director, sometimes they'll do a matinee show. They'll do discounted tickets. I've worked with my college band director to do side-by-sides. I've had my band students sit in the collegiate band room and play symphonic music next to the college music majors, so they can kind of get an idea of what that level looks like from people who look like them. It's about exposure. And we expose our kids to, I treat it like this, we expose our kids to too much candy and not enough fruits, vegetables, and protein on a balanced diet. We give them all candy because we say, well, don't eat the candy, and they're not pushing back against the candy, but we control that. We can take our kids, we can bring clinicians in. If you can bring your homeboy in to teach them a cadence, you can bring somebody in to play for your kids. You can bring somebody in to work with your kids. I see David Federley join, former principal tuba for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Me and David have talked to him. He's coming in my band room to work my tubas, because there's some things I can't teach a tuba player. I'm just not one. Shelman, don't judge me. I know you play tuba. I don't. And I'm seeking out some information. Say it again for the people in the back. Cut it out. But we really can figure this out. It's not an impossible hurdle to plan success for our band programs. And planning is planning exposure. That's part of planning too. You can put in your curriculum that your students will have, a side-by-side concert with the local university. It's a recruitment tool for them. Ultimately, let me see if I can find my charger, because, I feel like I should have. I might have to end it and start it again. Let me see. Ooh.